Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the film Skyfall, which is the latest installment in the James Bond film franchise that came out I think 1 or 2 months ago and that I saw at the cinema. I've just not been given a chance to do a review up until now, just through time and other commitments. I apologise that I've not done a review for quite a while actually. I think the last general review that I did was back in July or August with the Batman film, so I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. So anyway, Skyfall. What did I think of Skyfall? I'll try and give some context. I'll say what I think about the previous James Bond films. I've been sort of initiated with the franchise over the past year or so, because it's 2012's been I think it's the 50th anniversary of the first Bond film coming out. There's been a lot of celebrations of it on British television with I think Sky was showing all the Bond films at once, so it was that was an opportunity certainly to start seeing some of them, and I'll admit that I've quite liked what I've seen. Out of the old Bond films, I've seen some from the Connery era and from the Brosnan era, sorry. And I must admit, I've liked what I've seen. I had seen the previous Daniel Craig ones, but before this year, I'd seen Casino Royale and what's the other one? Quantum of Solace. Sorry, Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. I'd seen those before this year, and if I can be truly honest, I was not very impressed. I couldn't really get into them. I thought their plots were, I wouldn't go as far as to say dry, just quite convoluted. There were a lot of things that I felt just didn't make sense. The story just didn't feel very linear. I would probably have to watch them both again to fully grasp what was going on, and I just didn't particularly care for them. I think after seeing the old Bond films, it's quite clear that there's been a real marked transition from the old style of Bond films, from like the ones that went from the 60s up until the early 2000s, and into the Daniel Craig Bond films, because the old Bond films were very much like the action films of the 80s and 90s. They were, for want of a better phrase, they were silly. They were popcorn flicks, not meant to be taken 100% seriously. They didn't prize realism and gritty human drama. And I think that's a strength of action films of before the current era, I suppose you could say, like back in the 80s and 90s. I think that's what marked them very clearly from thrillers and dramas, in that they weren't serious. Well, they weren't 100% serious. Even the greats, like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, they're not 100% serious. There is some you take it with a pinch of salt almost, and they're great. I thoroughly enjoy films like that. I think they're a thrill ride. But in the past 10 years, especially after the Bond films, almost every action film you see nowadays is it's like a drama. They take themselves very, very seriously. They're very gritty. They've got real human drama going on inside them, and I think that's been to the detriment of action films as a whole. I mean, don't get me wrong, you still do get the films that are done in the old style of action films, and admittedly some of them have been they haven't been great successes, but by and large there's been a huge transition in the past 10 years in action films from fun, light-hearted, not totally realistic, to serious nitty-gritty drama, and that's been mirrored in the Bond films. It's went from not totally serious to very, very serious. Well, at least with the previous two Daniel Craig Bond films. But on to Skyfall. I hope I've made that point sufficiently. I really didn't know what to expect with Skyfall. I mean, what I'd heard before the film was that it was more in the style of the old Bond films. But anyway, I saw the film, and my initial impression was that it struck the balance perfectly between the style in the old films and the style in the new films. And overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a great time seeing it at the cinema. It was entertaining, beginning to end. I was never bored, certainly. It all seemed very linear. Everything seemed to lead into the next thing. And overall, there were very few distinct problems that I had with the film. I think some of the things that stood out for me in terms of clearly defining it as a good balance was that, I mean, the opening scene to the film was it was quintessential old style Bond. You know, it's like a chase on top of a moving train, and you know it's completely over the top and it's ostentatious, and it's display of just outright silliness almost, and it's great. You know, it's thoroughly enjoyable, and from that I'd kind of thought that it was going to be definitively in the old style of James Bond. Needless to say, that's not the case, but that was one example of it being in the style of the old Bond film. In fact, the entire opening to the film, even though, I mean, I'm saying that it's silly, it was very well done. You know, you were completely into it, and shot very well. You know, it clearly took a long time to coordinate and for them to get the special effects and the stunts and all that correct, and they really did a good job. I think the two best parts of this film were the beginning and the end. There were two very great set pieces enacted throughout it. The ending is like a sort of confrontation between, you know, Bond and the villain in the countryside, and it's very well done. You know, it's probably more in the style of the new Bond film. You know, it's not over the top. It's well, I won't say it's subdued, because there's a lot of you know, shooting and action and all that sort of thing. But compared to some of the climactic set pieces in other Bond films, it certainly is. Okay, it was subdued compared to those. And I also remember that there was a chase scene in the film that took place about probably the third act of the film, where it's Bond chasing the villain through like the London Underground subway system, and that was quite impressive given the small scale of it. Like, it was good to see that even though it was this fairly mundane, unimportant setting, you know, that probably forms a large part of you know, people's everyday lives, that they were able to convey this really tense, really action-packed chase scene through it. I thought that was very clever, and it was in the style of the new Bond films, but it was good enough in its quality that you were just able to, you were immersed in it. You weren't thinking, you know, is this old style or new style? It was just, you know, the film displaying, well, the filmmakers displaying the skill with that they are bestowed with. So yeah, that I think I've covered why I think there's a transition. The performances in the film were all highly commendable. I mean Daniel Craig, he's not my favourite Bond, certainly. I don't know who is it. It would probably be a toss-up between Connery and Brosnan, but I think he gets the job done. You know, he's certainly believable. He isn't a Timothy Dalton, let's just put it that way. Judi Dench's performance was excellent as always, but you wouldn't expect anything less from the likes of her. The villain, played by Javier Bardem, who also starred in No Country for Old Men, he was the villain in that as well. I thought he gave off a very good performance in this. Like, the scenes that he was in were quite. It was a type of. It was creepy and it was unsettling, but it wasn't, you know, outlandishly so. You know, he felt. I mean, yeah, he was a Bond villain in the cliched sense, I suppose, but they did put an effort into making him genuinely quite chilling in his conduct. I mean, Bardem is a very very talented actor. Like, he was in the film that I referred to earlier, No Country for Old Men. He gave a superb performance in that film. And the rest of the cast were okay. The way the film was shot was excellent. I especially liked the way that they captured the London and the city. I thought was very good. Like, they got some very good shots of just parts of the city, and it really represents it well. And I equally like the scenes in the countryside towards the end, where it's like the the Scottish Highlands. I mean, as someone who's visited that part of the country many times, I really did enjoy seeing it displayed on a big screen and presented in such fine quality of image. Let's just put it that way. And it was a great idea to have the climax of the film take place in that sort of setting. Really well done. The locations that they chose to shoot the film were all perfect. There were one or two issues that I had with the film. Having said earlier that the plot does feel very linear, the pace was kept quite constant. I would be a liar if I said that parts of it weren't unnecessary. Like they could have probably done to cut quite a few scenes here and there that really just don't contribute much to the plot, or if they do, it's not worthwhile. Let's just put it that way. But that's fairly minor. I don't hold that much to it. Also, there was a problem that I had with the villain, and it's that I have seen this problem in some of the other Bond films, and it's that they introduced the villain into the storyline, I would say, far too late. Like, it's a good hour and a half, I would say, before you actually see the Javier Bardem's character on screen, and I think that's a problem because, I mean, the threat of him is there before, but you don't quite know what Bond's up against. And I know that some people might argue, but that makes it more effective. Possibly, I can see that. Like, I'm not going to make too much of a big deal at this point, but I felt that they could have, if they'd introduced the villain a bit earlier on screen, it would have made the film balance out a bit better. Aside from that, I really didn't have any problems with the film. I mean, I certainly, these were problems that I had really just upon reflection, just thinking back in the film, watching it. I certainly was immune to any real standout flaws. One other thing about the villain, his motivation, I thought was a bit disappointing, shall we say. Like it was very much in the style of like new modern day action films to have the villain as a computer hacker expert. You've seen that in quite a lot of action films these days, be it I think it was Die Hard 4, one of the Bourne films. Pretty much nowadays, to be an action villain, you need to be a computer expert, and the only motivation he really seems to have is to, I don't know if this is, but spoiler alert, spoiler klaxon, his motivation is basically just to kill M. He doesn't really seem to have anything besides that. He's not wanting to take over the world or get all the world's gold or anything traditional like that. Which I suppose you could say it's symptomatic of the times we're in terms of film, but I don't know, I was a bit let down by that. Not to a great extent, but it was slightly disappointing. Aside from all that, the film, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that its strengths were clearly defined. It's the way it was shot, the way it was paced, the story itself, the way it was told, the characters, the acting, the effects. I had no problem with any of these. The problems that I did have with regards to the villain, with regards to certain scenes that were put in there, very minor, very easy to overlook. It was a fun cinema-going experience. I look forward to seeing any other Bond films that they decide to do with Daniel Craig in them. And as a rating, I suppose, I'm going to give it a rating of 7 out of 10. And I don't mean that in a sense that it's not good, because it certainly is, and I recommend it. Just in terms of the higher ratings for me, like 8 out of 10 and above, it's something. It really has to be excellent. It really has to be perfect for me to give a rating of 8 out of 10 or more. And for me, this was just a good popcorn flick. Not favourite film material, but certainly a good thrill ride and a good time at the cinema. So I recommend it. 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching.